He looked like trouble. That's what everyone thought when he walked through the tall glass doors of Millstone National Bank, backpack slung over one shoulder, dusty boots dragging the marble floor, and a hoodie that had seen too many winters. At 9:48 a.m., the lobby buzzed with quiet murmurs and the dull click of high heels on tile. Customers scrolled through their phones. Bank managers whispered in suits too tight for comfort, and a woman in a cleaning uniform clutched an envelope like it was her last lifeline. No one noticed the man at first, not really. But when they did, they noticed all the wrong things: the calloused hands, the old clothes, the silence. He moved like someone who didn't want to be seen but was painfully used to being watched. His name was Micah Cruz, and in the next 30 minutes, the entire building would try to erase him. But not before he changed it forever. Micah walked with the kind of patience that comes from living a life where waiting was the only choice. He took a number at the ticket machine. He sat down between an elderly woman with swollen ankles and a young man arguing with a digital assistant. A security guard eyed him from across the room, hand near his radio. The ceiling hummed with air conditioning. The walls were covered in slogans. "We're here for you. Banking that cares." But Micah had learned long ago that words on walls meant nothing if they didn't live in hearts. The old woman beside him tried to ask a teller a question. "Excuse me, could you help me with this form?" The teller didn't even lift her head. "It's self-service now. Use the screen behind you." I don't know how to," she began, but her voice was swallowed by indifference. Micah stood up. "May I?" he asked softly, helping her to the machine and walking her through the steps. Her eyes sparkled with quiet gratitude. "People don't usually stop," Micah just smiled. "Maybe they should." He returned to his seat, but he'd already been noticed. A junior employee whispered to a colleague, "Did you see him? Who comes to a bank dressed like that?" Then his number flashed on the screen. Counter 7. Micah stood. Across the room, Kendra Watts, a sharp-eyed teller with a freshly ironed blouse, adjusted her glasses as she saw him approach. Her gaze flicked to his shoes, then his hands, then his face. He greeted her. "Good morning." She gave him a rehearsed nod. "What can I help you with? I need to make a withdrawal." "Sure, how much?" $75,000. Her pen dropped. She stared at him. "I'm sorry, did you say 75,000? She repeated, voice edged with disbelief. He nodded. "Can I see your ID?" He handed over his worn leather wallet, revealing a government-issued ID and a black debit card with platinum markings. Kendra typed in the information. Her expression shifted. She frowned, typed again, looked up at him, then back at the screen. "This account." She hesitated. "This account doesn't look like it belongs to someone like you." Micah didn't flinch. "What exactly does someone like me look like?" She ignored the question, picked up the phone, and whispered to someone on the other end. Moments later, the branch manager, Terrence Hawley, arrived, polished shoes, custom suit, smug confidence. "I heard there was an issue," he said, not looking at Micah. Kendra explained in low tones. Terrence turned to Micah and gave him a polite but icy smile. "Sir, we've had a lot of fraudulent activity lately. I hope you understand, just a precaution." Micah nodded slowly. "So you'll verify my identity?" Terrence's smile widened, but not kindly. "We'll need to run additional checks. And until then, we're going to have to restrict access to this account." The whispering in the lobby began. Curious glances, murmurs. A boy pulled at his mother's sleeve. "Is that man in trouble?" Then Terrence leaned in closer. "Between you and me," he said with a smirk, "if this is some kind of con, it's not a good one. You should have done your homework. This account belongs to a man named Michael Cross." Micah looked him in the eyes. "It's pronounced Micah Cruz. That's me, born in Albuquerque. Social Security ends in 4867. Mother's name, Teresa. Father's name, unknown. And if you turn the card over, You'll see my digital signature embedded. Terrence blinked. Kendra checked. Everything matched. But Terrence's expression hardened. We'll still need to call security. Mika took a breath. In the corner, the security guard moved toward him. The manager leaned back, folded his arms, and said with a hint of triumph, "Let's see how this plays out." Mika stayed still, silent, watching, recording, because what no one knew, what would soon rock the very foundation of that building, was that this man who didn't look the part had built the systems they were using. That the very account they questioned had funded a dozen community programs. That Micah Cruz wasn't just a client. He owned the building they were standing in. And he was about to prove it. Micah remained seated, calm as stone. Around him, tension rippled through the room like static before a storm. Every second stretched longer than the last. The security guard, a bulky man with a badge that read R. Dalton, approached slowly. Hand resting near his holster, eyes scanning Micah like he was a ticking bomb. "You got ID?" Dalton asked, trying to keep his tone professional, but unable to hide the edge. "I already gave it to the teller," Micah replied, voice steady. Dalton looked at Kendra. She handed over the ID, still suspicious. He studied it. "That looks real," Dalton muttered. "It is," Micah said. "So's the account, so's the balance." Terrence Holley stepped in, eyebrows raised like a school principal lecturing a child. "Sir, the issue here isn't just the ID, it's the inconsistency. Someone dressed like you doesn't usually handle that kind of money. We have internal protocols, risk assessments, you understand." Micah tilted his head slightly. "Do you understand what you're saying right now?" Terrence hesitated. "I look like risk to you, danger. Because of the hoodie, the boots, the skin?" Micah's voice didn't rise, but it filled the room. "Or is it because people like me aren't supposed to be in places like this?" For a moment, no one breathed. Then Terrence scoffed. "Don't twist this into something it's not. We're just doing our job." "No," Micah said softly. "I did your job. I wrote half the fraud detection software this bank uses. I signed the contract for the biometric system. I negotiated the partnership that paid for this building's last renovation." Dalton blinked. "Wait, what did you say?" Micah reached slowly into his backpack. Tension spiked. Dalton's hand twitched toward his belt. Kendra stepped back. Micah paused. "Relax," he said gently. "It's just paperwork." He pulled out a black folder. Inside were contracts, internal memos, architectural schematics, all bearing the Millstone National logo. All with one signature at the bottom, Micah T. Cruz. Terrence flipped through the papers. "No, this is some kind of trick," he stammered. "This isn't possible." But it was. Because 3 years ago, Micah Cruz had been the keynote speaker at Millstone's annual Tech Innovation Summit. He had once sat in the boardroom they pretended didn't exist for men like him. And now he was sitting in a plastic chair, being interrogated like a con artist for daring to withdraw his own money. "You don't remember me, do you?" Micah asked. Terrence shook his head slowly. "You were a junior exec. You pitched an app redesign that flopped. I offered you feedback. You laughed it off and said my ideas were too urban for Millstone's clientele." The color drained from Terrence's face. Kendra, suddenly pale, whispered, "Oh my God." Across the lobby, a murmur spread. Clients who'd once side-eyed Micah now looked at him with curiosity, respect, regret. Dalton stepped back. "This guy's not lying," he said to Terrence. "These documents, they're legit. I saw his name on an internal memo last month. I thought it was a coincidence." Micah stood. "I gave this bank 10 years of my life," he said. "I built systems to protect people, to help people. But apparently, none of that matters when you look like I do." He turned to the crowd. "You want to know the real risk in this room? It's not me. It's a system that treats trust like a luxury only the rich can afford." No one spoke. The silence wasn't awkward anymore. It was heavy, awakened. Then his phone buzzed. Micah glanced at it, then walked toward the nearest camera on the wall. He stared directly into the lens. "To my team watching this live," he said, "you can begin the audit. Start with this branch." Kendra's knees nearly buckled. Terrence looked like he'd been hit with a freight train. "The audit? What audit?" he stammered. Micah turned back, his eyes now sharper, colder. "I've been investigating discrimination complaints across Millstone's network for months. Anonymous reports. Hidden bias, microaggressions. Today, I came in without a name tag or title. I came in as your average client. And you passed every single test by failing it." Terrence tried to speak, but no words came. "You judged me. You threatened me. You almost had me arrested for existing in a place I helped create." Outside, a sleek black car pulled up. The driver stepped out and opened the door. Micah turned to Dalton. "Thank you for staying calm." Dalton nodded, ashamed. Then Micah turned back one last time to Terrence and Kendra. "You could have treated me like a human being. That was all it would have taken." He walked toward the door, paused, looked back at the old woman he'd helped earlier. She mouthed, "Thank you." And with that, Micah Cruz disappeared through the doors he never should have had to fight to walk through. But this time, he wouldn't be forgotten. By the time Micah Cruz's boots touched the sidewalk outside Millstone National Bank, the first clip had already gone viral. A woman in the waiting area, discreet, unnoticed, had filmed everything. The confrontation, the humiliation, the reveal. She hadn't meant to record a scandal. She just felt something wrong was happening. By instinct. By empathy. And when she uploaded the video with the caption, "He just wanted his money," they called the police. Then they found out he owned the place. The internet ignited like gasoline on flame. Inside the bank, Terrence Hawley stood frozen in front of the security feed, eyes wide as the comments rolled in on his phone. "This is why we don't trust banks. Micah Cruz is a damn legend. Dress how you want, your character speaks louder. Fire that manager. Fire that teller. Fire them now." The PR team at Millstone's headquarters called the branch within the hour. Twice. No answer. Terrence locked himself in his office. Kendra asked to leave early, citing a headache, but she knew it wasn't her body hurting, it was her conscience. Meanwhile, across the city, Micah sat alone in a glass-walled corner of a co-working loft in downtown Phoenix, watching the footage replay on loop. His face remained impassive, but his fingers, they trembled slightly, not with fear, with fury. "I didn't want this to go public," he said, eyes locked on the screen. "I just wanted truth." Beside him sat Lena Rios, his chief ethics advisor, and one of the few people who knew what today was truly about. "They humiliated you, Micah," she said. "On camera, in your own system. This isn't just another policy failure. This is cultural, deep-rooted." He nodded. "I know. But now that it's public," Lena added, tapping her pen against her knee, "you have a choice. You can step back. Let come spin this. Let legal take the reins. Or, I burn the whole thing down," he finished. Lena smirked. "I was going to say rebuild it from the inside out." Micah leaned back in his chair. "I built that branch's software myself, watched it go live. Sat through training sessions with managers like Terrence, preaching about inclusion like it was gospel. And still, the virus survived. You exposed it." "Yeah, but exposure without action is just performance." He stood, walked to the window. Below, a crowd had started forming. Not protesters, not yet, curious faces, cell phones raised. People who had seen the clip and now stood in awe outside the building. Micah worked in hoping to catch a glimpse of the man who'd shattered the illusion that power looked a certain way. Lena joined him at the glass. "You're trending in 30 countries. "Good," Micah said. "Let them watch, but I'm not a symbol." "What are you then?" He turned, and for a moment, there was fire in his gaze. "I'm a mirror. And they're finally seeing what they've refused to look at for decades." Just then, the door burst open. Victor Maddox, Millstone's coup, barged in face red, tie loose, panic all over him. "What the hell, Micah?" he spat. "You ambushed us." "You ambushed me." Micah didn't flinch. "You knew about the complaints. You signed off on the review delays. Don't pretend this was a surprise." Victor's jaw tightened. "You made us look like fools." "No," Micah said calm. "You made yourself look like a fool. I just stopped covering it up." Victor marched closer, pointing a trembling finger. "We're under siege, Micah. Our stock dropped 6% in an hour. Our investors want answers. I've got CNN calling my cell phone. You think playing undercover boss in a hoodie helps anyone?" Micah stepped forward, unbothered. "I think the mother who was denied a loan because she didn't speak professional enough deserves better. I think the janitor whose application was tossed because of his zip code deserves better. I think every client who walks into a Millstone branch and gets sized up instead of served deserves better." Victor went silent. Micah's voice dropped to a near whisper. "This was never about me. This was about every invisible person you ignored while smiling into a camera for diversity campaigns." Victor didn't have a comeback. He left the room without another word. Lena exhaled. "You just declared war." "No," Micah said, reaching for his jacket. "I just told the truth. Now it's time to see who can live with it." As he walked out, his phone buzzed again. A message from a blocked number. "You've made enemies. Be careful where you walk next." Micah stared at the screen. Smiled, let them come, because this time he wasn't hiding. And the next chapter of this war was only beginning. By the next morning, Micah's name was on every major news outlet. Not just the clip, not just the story, but the man himself. Interviews, think pieces, debate panels. Some called him a hero. Others called him dangerous, a disruptor, a loose cannon. But the truth had no label, only consequences. Inside Millstone's 47th floor boardroom, the silence was thicker than the carpet. 12 executives sat around a long table. Leather chairs. Espresso cups untouched. Eyes on one another, no trust, no alliances. Just strategy and fear. Chairwoman Diane Archer, silver hair, steel gaze, broke the silence. "So, are we going to pretend Micah didn't just detonate a public relations bomb in the middle of our busiest quarter?" No one answered. Then, from the end of the table, Graham Price, head of risk and compliance, cleared his throat. "He embarrassed us." "No," said Yvonne Blake, VP of Community Relations. "You embarrassed us, Graham. He exposed what you didn't want to admit." "You're defending him?" "I'm saying he's right." Diane folded her hands. "Regardless of who's right, the company is bleeding. Our branches are being flooded with complaints. Our staff doesn't know how to respond. The unions are getting involved. We need to contain this. Fast." A younger man, Ethan Caldwell, from the innovation department leaned forward. "There's something else." Diane's brow rose. "What?" He hesitated. "There's a secondary video. Not from the bank lobby, from inside corporate." Everyone tensed. "What video?" Diane asked, ice creeping into her voice. Ethan tapped his tablet and sent the feed to the central screen. Grainy footage, a boardroom, 2 men in suits. One of them, Graham Price. The audio crackled. "Graham, we don't want more Micahs. You understand? If we start opening our doors to every street kid with a dream, we dilute the brand. There's a reason we hire polished. We're selling aspiration, not charity." Dead silence. Graham froze in his chair. The color drained from his face. "Who recorded this?" Yvonne's voice was razor sharp. "That's your concern?" Diane paused the video. Looked around, then leaned back slowly. "This changes everything." Graham stuttered. It was off record, taken out of context. "You know how it is." "No," Diane said coldly. "What I know is that we have rot in this company." And it just bled into the public eye. Micah hadn't leaked the clip. Not this one. That meant someone else inside had crossed the line from silent observer to active insurgent. Someone was feeding the fire from within, and Micah was already 6 steps ahead. Elsewhere, in a quiet cafe on the outskirts of town, Micah sat across from a woman with red braids and an army green coat. Jasmine Wells, former HR director, whistleblower, the kind of person people called emotional in emails, but right. 2 years later, "You got my message," she said. Micah nodded. "You were the one who sent the second video," she smiled. "You think I was going to let them gaslight the world?" He chuckled. "You always had perfect timing." She sipped her tea. "They're scrambling, Micah, and scared. That's when they're the most dangerous. You rattled their comfort zone. Now they'll try to either buy you or bury you. I won't sell out," he said. "And I've already been buried before." "They just didn't know I'd grow roots." Jasmine leaned in. "There's a deeper layer, a committee, off-books, internal network. Handpicked people who control hiring, narratives, media silence. They call it the channel." Micah's eyes narrowed. "I've heard whispers." "It's real, and you just stepped on their toes," Micah exhaled. "So what now?" Jasmine smiled. "You expose them, all of them. But not with fire, with light." Micah looked out the cafe window. Somewhere across town, an assistant manager was being trained on how to appear more inclusive. Somewhere else, a janitor's promotion request was being ignored. Somewhere else, a girl named Alondra was being told her curly hair was unprofessional for front-facing roles. He could see them all in his mind. The forgotten, the dismissed, the invisible. "Then let's bring the light," he said. But even he didn't know how dark the shadows of the channel really were. Not yet. They didn't attack him directly. That would have been too obvious. Instead, the sabotage started slow, subtle, calculated. It began with a software glitch. Micah was working late at the downtown office when he noticed it. A line of code in the fraud detection system had been modified. It redirected certain alerts to a secondary hidden inbox, an inbox he had never created. He froze. Checked the source. No trace of login. No IP. Whoever did this knew how to cover their tracks. Lena leaned over his shoulder. "Someone's rerouting client alerts?" Micah nodded. "And they're doing it from inside. I built this code. Only 5 people have access at this level." She looked at the timestamp, 3:13 a.m. last night. He opened the access log. 4 names, all accounted for. But the 5th, access, shadow admin _01. He stared at it. That username didn't exist in the employee database, or in any database. Lena's voice dropped to a whisper. "This is the channel, isn't it?" Micah nodded once. "We just found their back door." Across the city, in a sleek glass tower that bore no signage, 6 figures sat around a conference table. No names, no titles. Only Cody names: Marrow, Silks, Temple, Volt, Hex, Warden. They watched the viral video of Micah on repeat. "He's a threat," said Silks, tapping a long finger on the table. "Not because he exposed us, but because he's turning the public against the illusion we sell." Volt leaned forward. "So we end the illusion. Bury him, quietly." Temple spoke next. "We tried that. The campaign against him failed. Every hit piece backfired. People don't care about his wardrobe anymore. They care about his message." Hex, the youngest, scoffed. "Then break the message." "How?" asked Warden. Hex smiled darkly. "Make him look like what they feared he was from the start. Angry, dangerous, fraudulent." A pause. Then Marrow spoke, their leader, their strategist, their ghost. "There's another way, a more permanent one." Everyone leaned in. Marrow placed a single file on the table. Micah's full employment history, private emails, board meeting transcripts, photos of him entering buildings, a confidential psychiatric evaluation from years ago, buried deep in a university archive. "Everyone has shadows," Marrow whispered. "Even Micah Cruz." Meanwhile, Micah was already assembling his next move. He couldn't expose the channel alone. He needed allies, so he made a list. Former employees, clients, interns, telltale names whispered in break rooms. People who had seen the cracks but never had the power to act. Now, with the public eye wide open, they might. He called Jasmine. "I need you to reach out to the people they silenced, the ones they pushed out." She didn't hesitate, already did. He looked up. "You what?" She smirked. "You're not the only one with a plan, Cruz." By the end of the day, they had 12 names. Former staff with NDA scars and stories to tell. And they were willing to talk on camera. But that night, Micah's phone buzzed again, unknown number. One message: "Careful who you trust. One of them still works for us." He stared at it for a long time. This was no longer just about fixing the bank. It was about unmasking a machine. And he had just stepped into its gears. The headlines turned on him overnight. Exposed. Micah Cruz lied about his credentials? Anonymous sources claim Micah used insider access to embezzle funds. The fall of a hero? New allegations shake the man behind the viral video. It didn't matter that the accusations were vague, or that no formal charges had been filed. The channel didn't need truth. They just needed doubt, and the internet ate it up. Micah stared at his screen in disbelief. The article was everywhere. Hundreds of reposts. Thousands of comments. Knew he was too polished. This is why we don't trust these so-called underdog stories. Another fraud playing the victim. In 48 hours, his name went from hope to hoax. Lena burst into his office, tablet in hand. They got to the media. "They're coordinating it, Micah." He nodded slowly. "It's not just the media," he said. "They're inside the system. Look." He opened a dashboard of internal bank systems. 3 key modules: client protection, fraud detection, and whistleblower reports were offline, marked as maintenance. But Micah knew better. They were shutting down his channels, his ability to investigate, to prove, to fight. "They're scrubbing the evidence," he muttered. Lena's face hardened. "They're cutting off your oxygen." That night, someone leaked a video, a private moment, a raw moment. Micah in a board meeting years ago, arguing with executives about systemic bias, his voice raised, his tone sharp. In the clip, he slammed a folder on the table. No context, no background, just aggression. The caption read, "This is the real Micah Cruz, power-hungry, unstable, toxic." It worked. Within hours, former colleagues, some real, some fake, began sharing cryptic tweets. "You don't know the half of what he's done. We were warned. There's more coming." Micah's inbox exploded. Board members stopped responding. Sponsors withdrew support. His speaking engagements were canceled. Even his own team began asking questions, quietly, carefully. And then came the worst blow. Jasmine called. Her voice was low, broken. "Micah, someone leaked my divorce records and private texts from years ago." He closed his eyes. "They're coming after you now?" "No," she whispered. "They're coming after everyone who stood beside you." Micah found himself alone, not physically, but in that deeper, colder way. Trust fractured. Momentum stalled. Even his mother, who rarely called, left a message asking if he was okay. "You sound tired, Philho. Just remember who you are." But for the first time in years, he wasn't sure he did. Who was he without the public behind him? Without the support? Without the belief? He walked into the same cafe where he'd met Jasmine before. This time, no one looked at him with admiration. One table moved their phones off the table when he passed like he might steal them. A man by the window muttered, "Fraud." Micah sat down, opened his laptop, stared at a blinking cursor on a blank document. He couldn't type a single word. He couldn't fight an enemy that had no face. The channel wasn't just destroying his reputation. They were dismantling his identity, one whisper at a time. And the worst part? One of his own had helped them do it. He just didn't know who. Not yet. Silence had never felt this loud. Micah had gone 3 days without answering a single message. 3 nights without sleep. 3 different cafes in 3 different cities. Each one an attempt to blend in, to breathe without the weight of being that guy from the video. But each step, each glance, each whisper reminded him. The world no longer saw a leader. They saw a fraud. A liar, a man who fell. Lying on the stiff mattress of a no-name hotel on the edge of the city, Micah stared at the ceiling, thinking not about headlines, but about the old mattress from his childhood, foam on a concrete floor, the sound of dripping water through the roof, the warm hand of his mother gripping his as she whispered, "One day, you're gonna prove to them that people like us have worth, but when you don't forget who you are." Especially when the world tries to erase you, Micah sat up, reached into his backpack and pulled out an old, battered notebook. He began to write, not a speech, not a strategy, just names. The ones who betrayed him, the ones who disappeared, the ones who tried to buy his silence. But on the next page, he wrote the names of the ones who stayed. Jasmine, Lena, his mother, a janitor named Roberto who once said, "You speak like you haven't forgotten how to listen." And for them, he would rise. At 4:12 a.m., there was a knock on the door. Lena stood there, dark circles under her eyes, a fire behind them. Micah opened the door without a word. She stepped in and dropped a flash drive onto the table. "I accessed a mirror of the internal servers," she said. "Jasmine helped. We used an old dev login." Buried under 3 years of updates, Micah looked at her. "Did we get something?" Lena sat down slowly. "We got everything." He inserted the drive into his laptop. One main file popped up. Echoes are an underscore the underscore code. Log. He opened it, and there it was. The exact access logs that manipulated the internal systems. That deactivated the alerts. That planted the fake reports accusing Micah of fraud. There was no doubt. A single administrative account had been used repeatedly. Shadow admin _01. Micah's pulse slowed as he scrolled. And then he found it. The access location. The IP address. It wasn't external. It was traced directly to his own team, specifically. From the workstation of Ethan Caldwell, Micah's jaw clenched. "Ethan? The kid who warned us about the Graham Price video?" Lena nodded. "We cross-referenced account activity with offshore transactions. He was paid. A lot. Consistently. He's been working for the channel the whole time." Micah stood up, not in anger but in clarity. "I knew they'd hit back. I just didn't expect them to do it through one of my own." He turned toward the window. The city was still dark, but a thin line of gold glowed over the skyline. "I've lost the public, lost the press, lost my voice." He turned back to her, calm and centered. "But I still have the truth." By 9 a.m., the world woke up to a new video. No studio, no music, no edits. Just Micah, seated in front of a simple black wall, looking straight into the lens. "I didn't plan this. I didn't want a war. I wanted a conversation." He held up the flash drive. "But while I was trying to fix a system, some decided to destroy me from within it." He revealed it all. The transactions, the logins, the sabotage, the mole, name by name, by timestamp. Ethan Caldwell, the channel. He didn't ask for pity. Didn't beg for forgiveness. He didn't need to. Because the evidence spoke louder than any accusation ever could. Micah leaned in. "To those who believed in me, thank you. To those who betrayed me, thank you too. You reminded me that systems don't change when you play it safe. They change when someone is willing to lose everything for what's right. I've lost a lot, but not the truth. And now, I'm coming for everything." The video exploded. 10 million views in 6 hours. The hashtags flipped. Hashtag Micah lied was replaced by hashtag Micah stood. People began apologizing publicly. Donors returned. Even the media tried to walk it back. But it was no longer about headlines. This was war. Micah Cruz wasn't just rebuilding his name. He was dismantling the machine. And as for the channel, their walls were starting to crack. Because they never expected him to survive the fall, let alone rise from it stronger. They tried to silence him, discredit him, isolate him. But Micah Cruz did what most never do. He endured. And now, he was ready to burn down what needed burning. The auditorium was packed. Cameras pointed at the stage like sniper scopes. Reporters whispered predictions. Executives sat stiff in their reserved seats. A few PR managers had white-knuckled grips on their water bottles. This was not just a press conference. This was a reckoning. Micah stepped onto the stage in a plain black shirt. No tie, no jacket, no gloss. Just truth. And when he reached the podium, he didn't start with numbers. He started with a story. 16 years ago, I sat on a plastic chair at a local credit union, wearing a second-hand dress shirt and shoes with duct tape on the soles. I asked to open an account. The teller never looked me in the eye. They said I didn't meet the criteria. Said I didn't fit the profile. That day, I promised myself I'd come back, not for revenge, but for reform. And here I am. He looked across the crowd. I've been called a fraud, a fake, a thief, a liar, a threat. He held up a folder. In this file is a decade of buried emails, redacted complaints, silenced voices, evidence that the channel, a private, unaccountable group within Millstone, hijacked hiring practices, manipulated media, and protected executives who discriminated against people like me. Gasps echoed through the room. The screens behind him lit up. One by one, documents, screenshots, and statements appeared. Real people, real testimonies. A janitor, a single mother, a paraplegic veteran, a transgender client, a farmer from the South who was laughed at for trying to open a business account. Every face, a story that had been erased. Until now. And before you ask, Micah continued, yes, I was sabotaged. Yes, one of my own was paid to destroy me from within. And yes, I almost let it destroy me. He paused, but I didn't break. Because people like us, we don't break. We bend. We burn. We rebuild. A woman in the audience stood. Jasmine. Tell them what happens now, Micah. He turned to the cameras, to the public. I'm launching a new oversight coalition, independent, civilian-led, with full investigative access to banking practices, hiring bias, and client equity violations across every institution willing to face the truth. To Millstone's board, you have until midnight to begin a full internal restructuring. Or I walk. And when I walk, I'm taking your software, your systems, and your future with me. And to the channel? He stared into the lens. I know who you are. Every name, every signature, every decision. You built a fortress on fear and secrecy. But fear doesn't work on me anymore. You're done. The crowd erupted, not in applause but in something deeper. Relief, like someone had finally said what everyone else had been afraid to speak aloud. Reporters launched questions. Board members left their seats. Phones rang. A movement ignited in real time. And as Micah stepped down from the podium, dozens of strangers reached out to him. Not for photos, but for connection. Outside, under a sky clearing after rain, Micah stood by himself for a moment, watching. No headlines. No noise, just a quiet question in the back of his mind. What now? Lena joined him. You did it, she said. He shook his head. We started it. She smiled. You scared them. They should be scared, he replied, because for the first time, they're being seen. And as he walked away, someone called out to him from the crowd, Micah. He turned. It was a young man, jeans, hoodie, hesitant smile. I just wanted to say, I was gonna quit trying. But then I saw what you did. Micah nodded. You don't have to be loud to be powerful. You just have to refuse to disappear. The man smiled. I won't. Micah extended a hand. then let's keep walking. Because in the end, systems don't change on their own. They change when people stop waiting to be invited and start building the door themselves. And you? What would you have done in his place?